Hello colleagues, thank you very much for opening up and reviewing this PowerPoint slideshow. My name is Rob Buckley. I am a strategic sourcing specialist working for Cornwall Council and supporting my Together for Families colleagues in setting up this DPS for education placements. We are working together to ensure positive outcomes for our children and young people, and we appreciate your support in this. This PowerPoint will provide you with a range of information about arrangements for establishing individually commissioned education placements through our DPS for children and young people in Cornwall who have additional needs. The agenda for the PowerPoint covers off our priorities for children and young people, the Cornish context, the DPS itself, including the key aspects of how to work the DPS, call-off technical process, evaluation, placement variations, and finally contract management. Of course, our first priority is for children and young people to be safe. Each learner's voice is key to ensuring safety through all activities that you will undertake with and on behalf of our children and young people. Secondly, our expectation is that children and young people will be able to make accelerated educational progress from their starting point when they first join you. Needs will be clearly assessed. A range of tailored provision and a positive curriculum offer will enthuse learners, and progress will be tracked and reported. Finally, all the activities and provision will focus on adulthood and each individual's future in the mainstream world. Following on from the previous slide around our priorities, we also wanted to give you some information on the Cornish context. Cornwall is in line with the national profile for the range and frequency of special educational needs. In common with the rest of the country, exclusions from schools are linked to deprivation. Learners who are members of vulnerable groups, such as having special educational needs or identifying as a member of a black and minority ethnic group, are also overrepresented in exclusions in Cornwall. Along with all government funded organisations, we have to achieve value for money with the resources available to us. Cornwall is a low funded local authority for the high needs block of the Dedicated Schools grant. This is the source of funding for educational placements made via our DPS. Cornwall's placement costs are high, which may be in part due to the complexity of learner needs linked to the low proportion of children and young people accessing this type of provision. However, costs across the whole of the South West for independent or bespoke educational provision are comparatively high, and this is something that we need to monitor carefully. We're now moving on to the section of the presentation around the DPS itself. And there were really several key reasons as to why Cornwall Council moved to a DPS. Firstly, it's to help deliver high quality and affordable placements. Also to help stimulate market development in Cornwall for placements within Cornwall. At the same time, we're hoping that this will reduce risk for our providers with a flexible DPS that can be joined at any time without committing to vast framework agreements. So in terms of a DPS is essentially an open framework. A framework is limited to 4 years, however a DPS can run on for much longer. In this case, the Cornwall Council Education DPS will run for up to 10 years. As an open arrangement, suppliers can apply to join at any time, and it has to be run as a completely electronic process. We use the Proactive system as our DPS platform. I'm now going to talk through the mechanics of how a DPS works. I'm not going to talk through this specific slide in detail. This is the onboarding slide, which is really here for reference because you would have already passed this stage, so I won't read through the detail. But it is just again to show you that the DPS is open for the lifetime for other suppliers to join the DPS. It is a relatively quick and simple qualification process, and all suppliers who meet the criteria are added to the DPS. If you need any support with an onboarding process, please contact myself or my colleague. This slide shows the second stage of the DPS, which involves the call-off process. Now that you're on the DPS, you'll be invited to bid for placements through this call-off process from the 1st of September 2020. You'll receive a notification through Proactis when a placement is advertised, and if you wish to bid for this placement, you'll need to complete one quality response question and insert your price and submit. It's an attachment-based system where you download our template attachment, complete it with your information, reattach it back into the system and send it back to us before the deadline. This next slide covers off information on the needs and outcomes form and the submission requirements. When a placement is published through the DPS, it will contain a needs and outcomes form and the submission document. Within the needs and outcomes form, you will find redacted information on the child and their needs, any geographical requirements, and the anticipated outcomes to be achieved. Your tender submission within the submission document will need to meet the requirements set out in the needs and outcomes form. The submission document will need to be downloaded and completed with answers to a quality question and your price. When you have completed the submission document, you will need to upload it back into the DPS system and submit before the deadline. More detail through the remainder of this PowerPoint on how to submit the submission document and the evaluation procedure. This next section is around responding to a call-off within the Proactis system, and it will guide you through the technical process of responding to a call-off. However, before we leave the previous section completely, I would ask you to revisit the Schedule 4 call-off process, which forms part of your contract, as that gives the complete and detailed summary of the call-off process. Okay, so when a placement is advertised on Proactis, you'll receive an email notification that there is an opportunity that you may be interested in providing a quote for. To respond to this, you'll need to log into the Proactis system. After logging in, you'll be taken to the system homepage, which is shown in this slide. And at the top right of your screen, click the notifications link shown in the red circle. The next stage is to click on the relevant notification, and this will bring up the full notification, as you can see underlined red in the slide. In this example, a foster placement is being used, and this is the example that will flow through the rest of this guidance. The notification will detail what type of placement it is. In this example, as I've said, it's a fostering placement and it shows the closing date. You'll only receive notifications for the lots you've applied to join. So you click on the link, which will take you to the event page. This slide shows the events page referenced in the previous slide. Before you access and start your response, it's worth noting whether there are any messages that have already come in and been answered by the Council. Messages are where clarifications that have been submitted will be answered. In this case, there are no messages, but if there are messages shown, it's always worth reviewing them before starting your response. You then click Start to begin and access the activity summary. The activity summary shows the deadline for the response in the top right hand corner. In this case, there's 38 minutes remaining. The activity summary is where you'll find the IPR1 form and the quality and commercial submission document, together with the service agreement terms and conditions. The terms and conditions should already be familiar to you as they were published as part of the initial procurement process. You'll need to download these files and complete the fostering, quality and commercial submission document based on the requirements of the IPR1. Once you've done this, you then click on Start My Response. Once you've clicked on the Start My Response, That will take you through to the response page, which is shown on the slide here. The response page shows you in the Your Response box to the right of the slide what is missing in order for you to complete and submit your bid. For your submission to be considered, you will need to accept the terms and conditions. If you do not, you will not be able to submit your response. A copy of the terms and conditions can be found in the documents that you downloaded on the previous page titled Service Agreement. Where it says Response Documentation, Files and Links, click Add. Here you will need to add your completed Fostering Quality and Commercial Submission document. Next, click the Edit button next to the Additional Information. By now reaching this stage, you would have already now completed your quality and price submission as part of the single Word document template and reattached it back into the system. You would have also accepted the terms and conditions. On this page, you now have the opportunity to add some additional information, such as a reference number, response information, or additional comments if you would like to. If you don't want to add anything though, you can click on the tick box and then click Save. You will see that you are now returned to the response summary page where you have the opportunity to do a final check of everything before making your submission. Once everything is attached and accepted, you should have green lights on everything apart from the Submit Your Response checkbox on the right hand side of the screen. When you are happy that everything is correct, click the Submit Response button. Once you have clicked Submit Response, you will get this confirmation box, and when you are ready you can click Yes, I am sure I want to submit, or No, I will submit my response later if you would like to make any further changes. Once your response has been submitted, you'll be brought back to the summary page, which will give you an overview of your submission. This page will also record when your submission has gone in this case at the top of the screen, 17th of February at 10:58, and importantly before the deadline shown on the right hand side, which is at 11:30. If you then realise that you need to update or change your submission, you can still do that, provided that the deadline has not passed. To do this, go back to the activity summary page shown earlier in the slide set and click Change Response. The Council will not have access to any of the bids until the deadline for the tender has passed. When the deadline does expire, the Council will download all bids and evaluate them in line with the published evaluation methodology. This is based on two sections around quality and price. The quality submissions will be sent to the practice leaders for evaluation. The practice leaders will consider the offers and whether they meet the identified needs of the child as detailed in the IPR1 form. The quality submission will be scored in line with the published evaluation methodology. Price will also be evaluated. Prices will be scored on a comparative basis within respective tiers. This will be done by recording the lowest price submitted by any of the tenderers. Then for each tenderer, dividing this lowest price by the tenderer's price and then multiplying it by the allocated weighting. This next slide shows an evaluation and ranking example. The table shows that 3 providers bid through the call-off process for this particular placement. It shows that the quality weighting was 70% and that the price weighting was 30%. It also shows that providers 2 scored equally highest on quality, but that their price was the most economical, and therefore their combined score of 86% meant that they ranked first and were awarded the placement. This next slide gives some information around placement variations that may need to happen throughout the duration of a placement. For more detail on this, please again refer to the Schedule 4 call-off process, which contains a detailed flowchart and variation process. Throughout the placement, Cornwall Council would expect that children and young people will be supported to meet their outcomes, and as they do, outcomes need to be updated accordingly. Any variations recommended to the Council to either increase or decrease support will be assessed and approved by the Resource and Care Panel prior to any changes taking place. This will be in line with the published process flowchart within the call-off document. Any variations will require an updated IPA before approved changes take effect. Charges associated with variations outside of the approved process will not be eligible for payment. In terms of contract management, DPS placements will be overseen and managed by the Together for Families commissioning teams in line with the Council's contract management toolkit. This will cover an assessment around outcomes and due diligence. More information on the Council's contract management toolkit can be accessed on the Council's website. In due course, we will be publishing a full placements DPS provider pack in plenty of time for the DPS to go live on the 1st of September 2020. In the meantime, you can contact my colleague Dave Bray or myself with any DPS or process related queries. If you have any queries regarding a particular placement through the call-off process, you will need to follow the clarification process, which is detailed within the call-off document. Thank you for taking the time to sign your organisation up to our DPS for placements. We want to work strategically and in partnership with you, and we see the DPS as the next step to develop relationships to enable the best for our children and young people. We hope that you will find this guide useful for responding to opportunities that Cornwall Council will advertise from the 1st of September 2020 via the DPS.